Well, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting debate. It's very nice to be back at the Oxford Union. Apologies for being poorly dressed. I did have black tie when I was at Oxford, but it's more than 12 years ago now, and I tried on my black tie earlier, and it looks less like a dinner suit than a wetsuit. But notwithstanding my dress, I would like to tackle some of the things that have not been tackled, and answer some of the speeches that have already come from both sides, and to address what I think is an issue we have to take seriously, because it's about our future as a country and a society, and it's, in my opinion, not going to be easy, and it's going to require quite a lot of fairly clear, tough, frank thinking. Let me first of all give you some facts. We have to start this off from the facts. The 2011 census, which was published last year, showed that the number of people living in England and Wales who were born overseas rose by nearly 3 million in the last decade alone. Only 44.9% of London residents now tick the box saying that they are white British, and nearly 3 million people in England and Wales now live in households where not one adult speaks English as their main language. 23 of London's 33 London boroughs, in 23 of those 33 London boroughs, people who identify themselves as white Britons are now in a minority. A spokesman, by the way, for the Office of National Statistics hailed that as diversity, but I can assure you that some of those boroughs are not diverse at all. On the matter of the rate of immigration, let's just clear up something. Nobody on my side, I certainly am not against immigration, and that is not what the motion is about. And you can reinvent it however much you want, but that's not what it's about. It's that there has been too much. And I would say, like I think other speakers have already said, that that too much did not happen in the 50s, or the 60s, or the 70s, or the 80s. It happened under the Labour government in the 1990s and the early 2000s. There is a motif that this country has always been a nation of immigrants. That is not true. It is not true. For most of this country's history, there was a very homogeneous group of people on these islands. And the idea that what is happening now is what has always happened is simply a fib, and you have to look to this. The Huguenots are always given as an example, a very good example, and a group that 50,000 Huguenots came to this country in the period of the 1680s onwards. Now, 50,000 Huguenots over a period of years was equal to about 2 months of immigration in the 1990s. 50,000 was about 2 months. The Ugandan Asians expelled by Idi Amin, which this country, I think, rightly took in, numbered 30,000 people. 30,000 people by the late 1990s was 6 weeks of immigration. So my point to you, first of all, is that the speed and the rate matters, and it matters for a reason which I am going to come back to in a moment. But first, let me mention some of the arguments that have come up which do need answering about this. The first is the inevitable argument that the reason why we need mass immigration and have needed it is because there are jobs that British people will not do, and we need to import people to do those jobs. Let me say to you as frankly as it is possible to say, that is one of the most racist arguments you can hear. It suggests that there are jobs which British people not only don't want to do, but shouldn't do, don't have to do. We don't have to even encourage them to do. Please, you've had your go. We don't even need to encourage them to do. But we will go around the rest of the world and hoover up people who are willing to work for nothing because it provides us with cheap nannies and cheap waiters in restaurants and so on. I think it's a lamentable argument. The second argument you can hear, and we had it already tonight, is the argument about the hoovering up, as I would put it, of the other end, as it were, of the economic spectrum, that it is the best idea possible that we will travel around the world and hoover up nurses and doctors in Africa and across other regions of the world, that we can take people from the third world who the third world has superbly educated and make sure they benefit us. Again, I think a lamentable argument. Look, the argument on immigration often comes down to net benefits. Is it an economic net benefit or an economic problem? You can, incidentally, on the material on this, find pretty much a 50-50 50-50 divide. About 50% of the studies say that there's a huge impact positively for the country. About the other 50% say the opposite. And by the way, that even goes, Lord Singh, to the study you cited. You cited the UCL study. That same study found that between 1995 and 2011, migrants in the UK received £95 billion more in services and benefits than they contributed in taxes. That's the same study that you cited. Another one that we get told, and we got it from someone on the floor, we need immigrants because they're going to pay our pensions. Ladies and gentlemen, whoever the gentleman is, let me tell you something, a shocking fact. Immigrants get old as well. An amazing fact. Which means that if you have that model, every single year you need to import more and more immigrants because you need to support that. It's known as the pyramid on migration model, and it doesn't work either. Look, one of the strange things about having this debate is this. Everyone thinks that they have to tiptoe. I'm sure you're nervous about walking through the proposition lobby tonight. I'm sure you are, because this is an issue which is fervid and fetid in all sorts of ways. But one of the oddities about this is that there is complete political unanimity on this side of the House. Complete political unanimity. Jack Straw, who was one of the Labour ministers who presided over that catastrophic period of too fast immigration, now says, he said it in November of last year, that it was a spectacular mistake. That's his words, a spectacular mistake. David Miliband, now Labour leader, says that at the next general election... Ed, very easily done. Apologies. Ed Miliband, now Labour leader, says that if he wins the next general election, which he could, he will bring net immigration down because he realises his party got this wrong. He said in September of last year, I want to get overall immigration down. David Cameron, Nadim's party leader, the man who would be properly Prime Minister, perhaps in 2015, said in his speech last year, on 25th of March, he said, contra, Nadim, to your argument, quote, under the previous government, immigration was far too high and the system was badly out of control. Net migration needs to come down radically. That's the words of the Prime Minister. This is not an outrider argument. It's what all the main political parties now say. They say it because it's what the public think. 77% of the people in the British Social Attitudes poll last year said they wanted immigration to come down. Almost 60% said they wanted it to come down by a lot. That's the British people's opinion, and the politicians are simply, amazingly, having to try to answer that, and a serious need. Now, I'm aware that the bell has gone, but let me very quickly address the issue, if I can find it, that came up from a couple of people. And this is the key thing I really wanted to mention, if I may have a moment. This issue of our values. I hate hearing this, we don't know who we are. Because quite often it leads to the thing of, we're not anything. Britain isn't anything. Britain never existed. It's not an identity, and so on. One of the reasons you hear that is because it is an attempt, I think an honest and a decent attempt by people to answer a real question. When you have migration at the rate this country has had it in recent years, you have to expand and water down your definition of what you are, because you have people coming in so fast that what would have been your definitions of yourself stop holding. If you asked somebody 50 years ago, what is Britishness? What are British values? They would have said it very clearly. They are epitomised in a set of historic institutions, in the institutions of Parliament, in the institutions of trial by jury and the High Courts, in the great schools and universities. They would have said the monarchy. They would have said the Church of England. Why is it now that we have this big, endless debate, who are we, what are we? It's because we want to welcome people, but it's happened so fast, we have to end up doing things like saying Britishness is about fair play, or being nice to people. Everyone wants to be nice to people. Very few people would say our identity as a country is being mean to people. But we water it down because it's what we think we have to do, and in a way we're right. In a way we're right, because it has become very difficult to say what Britishness is or can be or should be for people when immigration happens at this kind of rate. I would submit, ladies and gentlemen, this is something which in your lifetime and mine is going to be a colossal issue. Migration does bring all sorts of benefits. When it comes at this sort of rate, I would argue it also brings some very negative things as well. And one of the things that is that people of this country, including many, many immigrants, and I'll finish on this, many immigrants, including first and second generation immigrants, now say there is a problem with the speed of immigration because it changes the country. It is all very well to say that we are open to people who share our values. But if our values water down and the people who come here come at the rate they have, it is not surprising that we will end up arguing for immigration as an economic thing, because we will be giving up our culture, we will be giving up our identity, and we will be saying what some people now do say, which is that the peoples of Britain and Europe have lost their place in the world. I think it is right for people to have a place they call home, an identity that they're proud of. I think it for all people around the world, and I think it for the people of this country. And I hope tonight you can vote to say you think that too. Thank you.